Everybody, quick video here about propositions of fact, propositions of value, and propositions of policy as we're moving into persuasion. The first one, propositions of fact, is when we are asking whether something can be verified as true or false. That is directly from your text. In order for this to take place, we need to do some type of outside research to decide if the claim is true or false. Here's an example. Monticello teachers favor female students over male students. Now, based on research, we could determine, is this true or is this false? Some of the research that we might do could include the grades of female versus male students. If we look at the grades of female students and we see that they are consistently higher in all grade levels, in all subject areas than male students, then we could probably say, well, yes, perhaps Monticello teachers favor female students over males. Two other examples we could take a look at. Time spent assisting female versus male students in class. If we see a teacher walking the classroom and they're only offering to help female students, well, that shows that they're favoring them. That could be a type of research. On the other hand, if a teacher is sitting at their desk for an entire hour and 10 females come to talk to that teacher and only one male comes to talk to that teacher, well, that doesn't show that the teacher is favoring females over males. That just shows that females are asking more questions. The last example could be maybe just interactions with females versus male students. If female students are consistently praised, they're greeted positively, they have more positive interactions, then maybe they are favored over male students. Now, because this is a proposition of fact, perhaps we do all this research and we determine this is actually false. Maybe it's not true. Maybe we see that males are receiving higher grades. Maybe we see that they are also receiving more assistance from teachers and that they have more positive interactions with teachers. So propositions of fact, when we see just the statement, just this first part, it doesn't mean you need to agree or disagree with it. It means that we either need to prove it true or false, and that makes it a proposition of fact. Reminder, for this type of proposition, you need to use evidence to support, to decide whether it's true or false. And your text also mentioned that propositions of fact could actually refer to the future. If we continue down the road that we are currently on, based on this support, based on this evidence, then here is what will happen. Now, this gets a little bit tricky because, of course, we can't verify whether the future is true or false, but we can consider what's going on today as true or false and see what that might naturally lead to. Second type of proposition is called a proposition of value, and this one compares multiple opinions or viewpoints to determine which is best. It's often based on our personal beliefs, and that's why it's called a proposition of value. These examples were mentioned in your text. Individuals in vegetative states should be kept alive versus should be taken off of life support. Well, those are multiple options for someone in a vegetative state. If they're in a vegetative state, they may not be conscious, but they could still breathe, they could still eat. There's the potential maybe that they could come out of that vegetative state. So some people argue they should be kept alive. Others say that person is not living up to, or they're not living their fullest life because they are in that vegetative state. Therefore, they should be taken off of life support. We have varying opinions based on those personal beliefs. Perhaps the most difficult will be determining the difference between propositions of policy and propositions of value, because they often tend to overlap, but the difference here is that propositions of policy advocate for a specific action to take place, and it usually has to do with some type of governing body. So if we click back here to look at our vegetative state examples, while we're not saying the state or the government should take that person off of life support, we are just talking about if they should be kept alive or not. Here's an example for you. I believe it was last year, liquor stores in Minnesota were open on Sundays for the first time since Prohibition. There was a law in place that said liquor stores can only be open Monday through Saturday, and the governing body, the government of Minnesota, right, decided that that should be changed. That's a policy. A governing body doesn't always have to be the government. It could also be a school government or an administration. Here's an example. At our school, of course, students are meant to stay on campus or at Monticello High School during open lunch, but a proposition of policy could be that students should be allowed to leave campus during open lunch. Well, that would have to be determined by our governing body of administrators, and it's asking for a specific action to take place, allowing students to leave campus. Let's look at a couple more examples to determine the difference between the three. So all of these have to do with plastic and reusable bags, but their difference is that one is a proposition of fact, the other a proposition of value, and the third a proposition of policy. So the first, we can just determine, is this true or false? Plastic bags damage the environment. We could look up research, we could talk about how long it takes for them to biodegrade. All of that is research. So we could determine, is this a true statement? Is this a false statement? The second one has to do with a personal action. So here's where it gets tricky to determine the difference between proposition of value and a proposition of policy. But the proposition of value, individuals should utilize reusable bags. Well, we are not requiring every single individual to use reusable bags. Then it might be a proposition of policy. We are just stating individuals should do this. It's an encouraged action based on the belief that plastic bags cause damage to the environment or they are wasteful, what have you. The third proposition here, the distribution of plastic bags should be banned. This one is a proposition of policy because we are specifically targeting the government. The government would have to make that law so that no company could distribute plastic bags. And we could certainly use evidence, perhaps from our proposition of fact. So you can see how, though these three are very similar, they all have to do with the same topic, they are different types of propositions. Hopefully you can determine the difference between proposition of value and proposition of policy. The core difference in the two, I would say, is that a proposition of policy, again, has to do with an actual action that is taking place and is directly tied to some type of governing body, whether that's actually the government or another entity.